Hey, welcome to another episode of Industry Insights. I'm here with Sam Sherwood, who is a product manager at Google. Sam, how are you?
Pretty good, Matt. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. I appreciate your time. So, Sam, talk to me a little bit about your role at Google. I know you've had many hats while there. So talk to us a little bit about what you do and your responsibilities.
Yeah. So I've been at Google just about a year and a half. I actually came into the company on the staffing side of things. So I started as a tech recruiter, working on bringing some of the best software engineering talent into Google. And then recently moved into this project manager role where I'm focused on building out a solution to some of our human resources needs as we sort of continue to grow and scale. So working a lot on requirement gathering with internal customers at our company, sharing that with our tech team, and building an instance of Salesforce that fits the needs of our people operations team.
In your different roles within the company, and then also within other work experiences, what are some of the hard skills that you need to have, but then also what are some of the soft skills that you have needed to develop to be successful as you've worked in Google and other companies?
Yeah, great question. So, I think for a long time, if you wanted to be successful in the United States or wherever, you focused hard in school, you learned a skill or a trade, you joined a company, and you stayed there for 20 to 30 years. Nothing much changed in that company. You did your job and you made your money. Working in tech is very, very different. It's less about learning a skill or a trade, and it's more about developing the skills around learning quickly and collaborating with your peers, and thinking deeply about some of the problems that are facing society that can be solved with technology. So there are the hard skills that you have to learn. So if you want to be a software engineer, you have to learn some of the languages that are required to actually do the software engineering. But if you want to get hired at some of the big tech companies, Google, Amazon, Facebook, Microsoft, you need to also be able to solve problems. So in addition to having those hard skills like JavaScript programming, you're also going to have to be able to think critically, and think sort of have a broader vision for how you think technology can help solve the world's problems, and then ultimately actually convey that passion and that ability in an interview process.
Big tech companies are changing rapidly. It's part of the dynamicy of the industry. For example, the Google that we know now, or the YouTube we use today, or in China, for example, Tencent or Alibaba, they didn't exist 5 years ago in the form they exist now, or 10 years ago. How, as somebody in such a rapidly changing industry like yourself, how do you prepare on the short term and long term to be ready for those changes? In short, how do you constantly adapt to the needs of the industry?
Yeah, I think that's a wonderful point. And using Google specifically as an example, they started as a relatively simple search engine, and now have expanded to have products in a huge a number of markets. There's YouTube, like you mentioned. We're also in the hardware space. We're in the cloud services space. We're in the gaming space even now. Driverless cars exist under sort of the same umbrella as Google. So you're right in that there's sort of an old adage that you're in schools, you're teaching kids how to do jobs that don't exist yet. It's kind of the same with at Google. We have people who have been there for 12 to 15 years, and are doing totally different work than what they were hired for. So they had to be able to adapt and to learn quickly. And that's been true even in my shorter amount of time, which is just about, again, 16 months. I started with a very narrowly focused role right when I joined, and I had to quickly take on projects within my individual role. I took on broader projects in sort of a completely different scope within Google, and then finally got the role that I'm in now, which is much more complex and requires sort of a much different level of thinking than my original job. What I think helped prepare me for those sort of dramatic changes was sort of practicing them. So this is even back in high school. I would, you know, take time for my academics, but I was also involved in sports and in music, and I was code switching all the time between different groups of people, and I was sort of expanding my abilities outside of sort of just the academic pursuits that I had. And I think that sort of continued on throughout my career, both academically and my career. Um, I've taken advantage of opportunities that have gotten me out of my comfort zone, that have gotten me out of my more narrow stream of work, that have allowed me to build the skills necessary to become a project manager today. And I feel myself relying on some of those skills uh, every single day in my role that I learned maybe in high school, or I learned in college, or I learned in my last job. And so that's been a huge value to my current role. In addition, to just sort of practice some of those skills, the other critical piece of my career and what has gotten me where I am now are relationships. Um, I I consistently put relationships as the most important part of any new job, and I work hard to build those immediately. That's some advice I got in my first job out of college, and it stuck with me. And every single job since my first one has been provided to me, or the opportunity has been opened to me because of someone else I've worked with. So that is another thing that I would absolutely stress as you're thinking about your career is relationships.
I want to expand on that a little bit. One, tell me the value that you've taken from mentorship,
Mm.
and how that has gotten you to where you are. And then two is, when you talk about networks and
Mm.
relationships, we obviously understand those as our coworkers, the people we went to college with. Tell me how you define your own
Mm.
network and how you go pursue that.
Yeah. So that first question, from about mentorship specifically, my one of my most important mentors that I've ever had was only a manager of mine for a relatively short amount of time. It was about a year, and she was critical in my development as a professional, not necessarily even specifically in the role that I was working in, but just really she helped foster my learning related to interpersonal relationships in the office, how to work an email inbox, how to have a meaningful conversation with a customer, with a client. And so she was incredibly helpful just in that initial learning in my role. But once she left, so she left the company after about a year, because of the relationship we built, we continued to stay in contact even after she left the role of manager. And she continued to be a mentor to me. I would always go back to her with questions related to work, to the next steps I wanted to take in my career. I used her as a sounding board for everything like that because I trusted her. I knew that she had followed a path that had led to success, and I wanted to emulate that. In addition to, and I think this is important as well, in addition to the working and professional relationship we had, I made an effort to connect with her on a more personal level as well. I got to know her partner. I got to know sort of what her plans were outside of work as well, which really allowed us to connect on a more personal level, allowed us to continue the relationship even today, even though we haven't worked together for a long time. So she's been critical in my success throughout my career, and so mentorship, and that's just one example. Mentorship is absolutely critical, not only for what it can do for it to help you grow in your current role or in your skills, but also in what they can do in your future career. Um, the second half of the question around networking and how I define that. I think some people in this modern sort of in the modern way think of your network as who you're connected with on LinkedIn, who, you know, maybe who you've worked with as a customer, or you've worked with in a recruiting context, or whatever else it is. I think LinkedIn, while critical, is never going to be, well, it could be, and I don't want to say never, but it's not going to be the most important thing for you getting your job. I think you need a LinkedIn that shows exactly what you're doing now, what your skills are, what company you worked for how long, where you went to school. But you know what's really going to help you get a job is a personal relationship that you build with someone who's at that company. I can tell you, being in recruitment, I can tell you hiring, I can tell you in hiring, I can tell you in decision making related to people coming onto a company, who you know in that company holds a lot of weight. You know, you're always going to have to pass that software engineering bar. You're always going to have to show that you're able to send an email. But what pushes you over the edge, particularly at these companies that are getting millions of applications, is who you know. And so starting now, if you think about every relationship you have, think about every interaction you have, and focus on it as what it could be, which is your next job, right? Or someone that can help you, can mentor you and push you into the next steps of your career. And if you do that, your network will just grow exponentially every year. And now I know people at Google in different roles and different orgs. I know people at startups. I know people in non-tech and nonprofit, in whatever, you know, in so many different spheres, that if I wanted to start exploring other roles, I have 25, 30, 35 people I could text, call, send a message to, who would be willing and happy to get coffee with me.
So beyond mentorships and beyond network, what's something you know now that you wish you knew when you graduated college?
Yeah, that's a really good question. One piece of advice I think that I got and was tough in college, and some people, I'll back up a little bit. Some people in college know exactly what they want to do. They're pre-med, they're going to med school, they're going to scribe for a year between, you know, college and med school. They're going to do their residency, and they're going to be a doctor for the rest of their lives, right? There's plenty of people like that. Most people, you know, the vast majority of people have no idea what they're doing. I mean, they might say like, I want to work in business. That's ridiculous. Essentially, you're going to have to go roll with the punches. You're going to have to go where the stream takes you. You're going to have to go with the flow. Which is back to that critical piece of networking and who you know, because that's going to sort of help guide your path. But one piece of advice I got 2 or 3 years after college, which has now continued to be something that anchor on in my career, is that you have to tell a narrative or a story with your career. If you can't, even if it is just going with the flow and doing whatever happens next, if you can't tell a story with your career, you'll never be able to answer the questions that you'll get in an interview. When someone asks you, why do you want this job? Or if someone asks you, tell me about your experience up to this point, be able to tell a story, and that's going to go a long way. Practice your story. And I'm telling you, if you looked at my LinkedIn, you'd be like, this guy does not have a story. And then I would tell you it, and you'd be like, oh yeah, that makes sense. So think about that when you're graduating. Even if you're just doing some rando job just to get experience, an internship, whatever you're doing, think about that and come up with your story.
All right, so things we've learned from Sam. Find a mentor, build a network, personal relationships and business relationships, and then ultimately know your story, while at the same time making sure that you're building up the hard skills required to execute the job and the soft skills to be able to solve problems, connect ideas. Sam, on a final note, what's one piece of advice you would tell a 19-year-old sophomore in college who says, I want to work at a big tech firm upon graduation?
Yeah. Sophomore in college, I would first say have fun. One thing. Oh, do I only get one thing?
We can have two things after that one.
Okay, two things. Have fun. Enjoy college. Enjoy yourself. Things that are fun can help lead to good things in your career as well. Don't forget that. You learn a lot of skills by doing things outside of your academic pursuits. The second thing is start building your network now. Get job experience, whatever that is. Take a summer internship, even if it isn't a career that you necessarily want to do. But do research for a summer. Work at a pool, work at a restaurant. Start getting experiences that help you understand and navigate a workplace, so that when you get hired, you are the fastest person in your hiring class to actually start doing your real job, and not figuring out how Microsoft Outlook works, or how to eat lunch with the rest of your team. Because that's how you really make an impact. That's how you build a network, and that's how you're going to be successful.
Sam, final thought, and I want you to respond to a quote. Quote, "These big tech firms can find anybody they want to do the job they're hiring for.
Mm-hmm.
But the people that they hire can do any job at the firm and can learn to succeed in any role."
Yeah, I mean, that should be a driving ethos for people who want to work in tech. I think that's common across Google, Amazon, Facebook. They're not interested in what if you can plug into a singular role now. They're interested in if you're going to be able to solve the problems that don't exist. No one, when Google started, had any idea that driverless cars were going to be a critical part of our future. And now Google is leading the way in there. And it's Google employees who have been there for 15 years who are running the show. Maybe they were really good at some old language back in the day, but what they were really great at was problem solving. And so I think that quote hits the nail on the head. You have to be able to think critically about problems, be solution oriented, be action oriented, and you'll be successful.
Once again, Sam Sherwood, a project manager at Google. Sam, thanks for your time.
Hey, thank you, Matt. I appreciate it.